Thanks for the patience, everybody. I hope you guys are having a good start to the Drupal camp so far. I'm going to apologize right now. I don't know if this coffee is going to offset. My 5-year-old kept me up. She didn't fall asleep till 5 in the morning. So it's been a while since that's happened. So we're going to see if, see how we do. But anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about how we can empower content creators and content editors through Drupal. I think something that happens, very often is that as you're working on a website, either it's being developed for you and you're ready to, take it and run with it, or you're helping, build the site. And when you're looking at all the features you're trying to accomplish, one of the things that's, sort of left for the very end and then very rarely, worked on or taken farther is helping people administer content. So out of the box, Drupal handles node pages and big content types very flexibly, very nicely. But the web and a given web page today is a lot more complicated than a single node. With responsive sites, responsive content, and different bits and pieces of content coming from all over the place, it can be really difficult to manage these things very easily and well. And so after running into this with, a handful of clients where our post handoff would be, hey, we love the site, it looks great, it's doing exactly what we need to do it for the front-end user, but the people behind the scenes are not able to edit it and update it as easily as they'd like to. We really took some time to think long and hard, how do we complement what Drupal's already doing? My name is Jason Froderman. I work for a full-service creative firm here in St. Louis called Grain, and we do everything from branding, film, and I oversee and sort of lead our technology team. So half the time we're working in Drupal as our CMS platform, building sites out, marketing, e-commerce, and then the rest of the work that we do is in Node, Angular, Ember, sort of iOS apps. But after a while, we just sort of got sick of hearing, hey, the admin is okay, but it's not great. So we wanted to sort of solve this problem. So we were inspired back in the Drupal 7 days by contextual links. So I've got the Drupal camp site loaded up, and I'm logged in right now, and I'm trying. All of a sudden, we were sitting around one day, and we're like, hey, this gear that pops up out of nowhere that wasn't in Drupal 6, this is fantastic for Drupal 7, sort of baked in. How do we build off of that? Out of the box, this works with views and blocks and different things, but it's also getting a lot of Drupal and requiring Drupal knowledge very quickly, whether you're using blocks or views. So the moment one of those content administrators or content creators were getting in there, they're like, okay, now I'm sort of confused. What do I need to do? I just want to add a piece of content or I want to update it. So inspired by the contextual links, we're like, well, what if while they're logged in, we allow them to look at the website from the front end and have quick, easy ways to edit content. So this is one of the first clients, one of the first sites that we worked on. This was a couple of years ago. This is the mayor of St. Louis here. He came to us, and we were we rebranded him. We built out a new site, but they only had 2 people editing content, and they were doing 10 other jobs. So we wanted to make it really, really easy for them. That was a big part of the project, to make sure that one of our goals was to make this super easy to edit. So given this homepage, for example, I just want to run through this. We've got a really large curtain in theater. We're pulling in different types of content we want to let them control. And then all of a sudden you've got, sort of a general summary and overview, sort of trying to describe, what this mayor believes in and what sort of sets him apart in his view on St. Louis. And then we're bringing in content throughout the site. So nothing that you guys haven't seen with the Drupal site. We're bringing in bits and pieces from all over the place. But our goal was, how do we make this super easy to edit for them? And so what we did was we created, now I'm switching over to a testing site so I can update away without having to worry about updating the live site. But once you're logged in, if they were to log in and get redirected to admin, they're going to see content, which is obviously going to jump them to be able to edit nodes. Otherwise, their their user, their role, we're hiding the rest of Drupal from them. They don't understand it. They don't want to think about it. They just want to be able to update content. They want to be able to do it really, really easily. So going back to the homepage, for instance, we brought the gear idea from contextual links and just say, hey, how do we bring this forward to them? So now for them, it's as simple as, clicking. They can control what piece of content is the main part of the curtain. They can control the text. If they want to override the image as a part of that content, they can do that. But all of these little bits and pieces, which, this little bit of content, we've got a gear here. All of this, when you think about building a responsive site, and when you say, hey, we want to let you update the website, it's so difficult or it can be really difficult to let them update these things without them dealing with markup. Like, how are you controlling columns? How are you controlling resizes? So our goal here is we drop this little bit of content all the way, inside, so they can't break things. So this is wrapped in and around, our responsive grid, and then no matter what they're doing, no matter what they're changing, however we change, this text is not a great example of changing a lot, but they're able to edit stuff without having to worry about it. So if we go to this single piece of content, out of the box, this is really, really simple, but this kept all of Drupal away from them and really helped them feel like, okay, I can edit this from a mobile phone. So that first page where you're controlling the content, they've done this while they're out. They're like, hey, we added content, but hey, we forgot to update the curtain. They're able to log in from their mobile phone and edit this. And they can edit little bits and pieces of content really easily. And our goal here was, out of the box, we didn't feel like blocks did this very well, because as soon as you've created a block, blocks don't move from different sites super easily unless you're using features. And the client is paying us to not use for them to not have to use features, to be able to move blocks around in the way Drupal sort of built out blocks. And blocks also don't really have any kind of responsive, aspect to them. Our goal here is to say, depending on what viewport they are, they might want to change the text. They might want to show less text on mobile. They might want to say it more succinctly so they can scroll and get to the content more quickly. So this idea was, how do we, more or less create a variable that just sort of sits here, but then is, aware of, okay, if it's small, but if it's medium, or actually let's just do large, this is different content. So small would apply all the way up, but now that I've edited this for large, I see this as different content. But if I bring up, mobile or whatever, it's switching. So again, they're able to control what they want to, within a responsive context really easily. So blocks, I just reset it. That's unfortunate. Blocks weren't a good solution. And when we first went down this path, we're like, hey, we'll use variables. Drupal's got this instance idea of variables, and we can just let these little bits and pieces of content live there, and they can be brought in. Who here has written custom modules for Drupal? Okay, so how many of you guys know that variables get bootstrapped entirely on every page load? Okay, yes. I didn't know that. I'd written a couple modules, and I'm like, why is this site performing really, really, crappily? Because we had 10, 15, 20 pieces of content that we're bringing in every time, and it was, some of these are really long pieces. So, all right, variables aren't going to do it, and neither are, blocks. So we took this one from just, basic text examples here, and then what we sort of moved up to was like, okay, if we can edit single pieces of content, how about pieces of content that are a little bit more complicated? Here we've just got text, but what if we want to easily edit something that's a little bit more involved, where we're, letting them edit text, potentially links. All of these items just correspond to different captions here. And again, our goal is to just let this get in the way, but with this kind of design, this is one of those designs, or a type of design that can be really easily broken if you don't know what you're doing, if you're editing content. So by letting them only edit the text, we're enabling them to do a lot more quickly, and then we don't have to fear them, breaking the site. So here, this is another instance So it's a carousel. On mobile, it's a swiper. How do we let them control this easily? And then you're not having to worry about, the different stylings of text and fonts used. So we're just breaking out, quotes, person, position, and then we're just giving them, a really simple interface to sort of be able to reorder this. So again, there's this balance of let them update the content they're going to update most often, really easily, and sort of get out of the way.
Are those all individual nodes?
No. So, right. So, and they're not variables. Basically, we've written a custom module so that's saved in a table. Every one of these is just a row in a module's database. So the module that we called it is called param. We'll jump in there, but the whole idea is the param. This param module is aware of small bits of content, whether it's a single field or multiple, and then it can be aware of what type of device and size you want to set it. So you say what do you define as small, medium, large viewports, and then it's saving that content differently. Right. Yeah. So there are ways where people build out a Drupal site, and every one of these is a node, and it gets pretty heavy pretty quickly, especially because this is just 1/5 of a single, 1/5 of the homepage, and our node's the best way to go there. As we talked with clients and worked with it, it wasn't as smooth or easy to use as an interface. Any questions so far? Okay. So this is a good example with this homepage. This is a school here in St. Louis on Washington Avenue. They're a very small school, under 200 students. Got 4 or 5 really focused programs, and their website before this was a WordPress site that every time they went to edit it, all the HTML, all the code was just mashed into a single field on a post, and they couldn't manage to update it without breaking things, and so they stopped updating the website because they didn't want to break it. And obviously there's just a no-win situation, because we've found, as we've been doing this over the last couple of years, as we empower those content creators, they're much more likely to get into the content, update it, keep it up to date. They feel empowered. It's no longer a liability. And I feel like we're getting to a point where responsive is no longer an option in most people's minds, but we're getting to a point where UX is just expected everywhere. And it's a really high bar, but as we look at different apps on mobile devices, people just get used to. They want to use the easiest to use apps. And when it comes to updating a website, Drupal, WordPress, we got to solve really complicated problems, but we need to do it in a way that we empower these users, because if it gets in the way, they're going to be like, well, I'm going to either not do it, or I'm going to find another way to do this, because this just doesn't feel like it's working well. I've been designing websites for about 10 years, and 10 years ago, man, that bar was so low, it's like it's buried. Walking over it to make them happy with a site was a very different world. So anyway, so last but not least, I just wanted to bring up one last example of where and sort of how we use this module before we jump into some of the code. This is for WashU's Law School. They wanted to create a microsite to focus on reaching prospective students. And the goal here was to let this live outside of their main website, but to reach students well. They'd have a lot of students from the coast, considering a lot of different schools, and St. Louis was very, wasn't known or tangible to them. And so part of this was like, speaking about what WashU provides as far as law school experience and the connections you make and the education, but also just about representing St. Louis well and trying to help them understand that St. Louis has got a lot of great things. So this is a page that our goal was to walk a very specific audience through a narrative. So Ken later today is talking about content strategy. Here this is more the technical side, how we're trying to enable them to sort of do this more easily, but the goal here is to walk them through a very paced narrative, like leading them through these different high-level things. This homepage lets them jump to another page for each one of these that gets more into content. But this is a type of design where we're trying to, really sort of sample little bits and pieces of content and then let them dive into the next. And this is the type of page where if you wanted to enable them to edit little bits and pieces of content, it could get really complicated really quickly because every section is very, very different. And how do you enable them to update and control what they need to be able to control without potentially losing a div or a span and just things sort of being out of whack? So time and time again, a lighter weight approach to editing content, we've found that it's been really, really helpful for them to be able to log in and then click on a link and they're editing content and they get to decide, okay, is this for everything or do I want to change the way content is shown on the web page? Okay. All right, they dropped a part of this page that was something I wanted to talk about, but I should have looked at that before now. Okay, so to get into some code. So first, I just wanted to speak to, how are we doing this, and the idea here is we're serializing an array, and every bit of a template file is just referencing this small section of content. So for a given page, we're saying we've got the home curtain. All this is related to the home curtain. This is the, we're storing the NID for the blog that we're wanting to feature, the home curtain headline, home curtain text. So every little bit and piece of content just ends up becoming a single entry here. There's not that many here. On some of the sites, we've got probably, 50 to 100 rows, and that's empowering them to edit content across 10 to 15 pages. Lots of very small bits and pieces. So at the end of the day, there's not much here. What's exciting to me is we were trying to solve this problem. It's how do we make this super easy? I'll jump into some template files here shortly, but at the end of the day, we're emulating what the var get and set are doing, but we just wanted to make sure it wasn't bootstrapped. That's all we really needed. If we were able to accomplish that, then Drupal goes on its merry way, and then we're able to store content, serialize, unserialize really, really easily, and then create this better experience on the front end. So a big takeaway for us was, wow, with a little bit of code, we can go a long way. So how, in what other ways can we complement Drupal's content authoring experience, out of the box? What works well, but then what can we, what can we improve? I'm really excited about Spark. It's doing a lot of great things in terms of making the authoring experience and being able to preview content in responsive ways, very easy to use, but it's also a very, it's a heavy solution. It needs to deal with nodes and taxonomies and all this different stuff, but it's coming a long way to make the content authoring experience a lot stronger in Drupal 8. So the last thing I wanted to do. Okay, so I open, I'm just looking at the code for the Mayor Slay site first to take a look at the templates. But with the single module, with the database table sort of structured as you've seen it, as we are wanting to implement that from a templating perspective, where is it? Okay. When we're getting at a custom page template, can you guys see that text? Okay. All we're doing is we're just dumping content. So we're prepping content in template.php, and then this way we can wrap a lot of content with all of the right markup and stay really, really lightweight for all of these three things to sort of work in concert. The module, the editing experience, and then the templating, just to make sure that all of this works really, really nicely together. And then on a much simpler page, like on a contact page, we've got, much fewer, but, a couple headers. And then, on that kind of a page, that's all we're letting them control. We don't want them to break the form, change different things, but it's like, what do you need to change and change often? We're gonna drop that in, and then we're gonna let you do that, from a given page. So it allows you to be really, really selective about, how you can go about enabling them to change the things that matter most to them, and then not changing things that might actually affect backend stuff. So I've always found with WordPress, I've built a lot of sites with WordPress. I haven't built a large site on WordPress for a couple of years, but it always, whenever I would do a handoff, I always hated, there's this one plugin that you need to update. And a few years ago, I felt like, okay, if you need to be able to update this plugin, I got to give you permission to look at all plugins and edit all files. And, yes, just stay away from it. But it just felt wrong to say, hey, I've now empowered you to break your site in, a million different ways. Is there not a better way? And, Drupal out of the box with roles and permissions, does that a lot more nicely. But still there, if you don't take the time to sort of use roles and permissions well, it can be a lot of work. And this creates a user role that stays more front end than back end. So we're actually, we're able to do less work to empower them to update the most important pieces, as easily as possible. So that's all I've got. If you guys have got questions, I appreciate you guys being here and your patience with the technical issues at first. Yes.
Instance on the SIBA website where you have the testimonials and statistics,
Mm-hmm.
how do you prevent the user from breaking something like that where you have the text bubble? So if they
man. Yep. Yeah. So we're So the module that's up on GitHub, and we'll update this. I'm going to make sure on the page, if you guys ever want to use this as a starting point, that you guys can do that. You guys can use it. What I need to do is create a basic Drupal page, Drupal site that actually uses it so you can see the whole thing, not just the module. But our goal, so we're working on a project right now for it's a much larger Drupal site, and they're pushing all this product content to us, and then they're supplementing that content. And there are a lot of instances where, based on the design and what they're doing, we need to protect them from adding way too much content or markup. So what we're planning on doing is actually just having a text counter. So we're using JavaScript to limit it. So you can just say, for this parameterized content, does it have a limit? If not, no limit. Otherwise, it'll use JavaScript, and then in the, via the form API or the validation in the module, we'll check and make sure that that's handled.
Awesome.
So, yeah, it's proof of concept right now, but we're going to be pushing that out in the next few months.
I'm assuming that currently params for Drupal 7. Is there a plan to set that up for Drupal 8 as well?
Yeah, we've only played with Drupal 8 a little bit. With Spark and some of these other initiatives, I don't want to make an assumption that param deserves to, be there. But I think that it will. Once we tackle our first larger responsive site on Drupal 8, I sort of just want to see, is there a need? Because, Drupal 7, if you've got blocks, variables, whatever, that's not going to do it. But even just the way we're handling, via just drop down different media queries, with Drupal 8's preview and it being context and device aware, but you can control, hey, I want to see what it looks like on this kind of phone. If we're doing this, can we work with that, or are we working against what Drupal 8's doing in core? So, but yeah, if there's a need, we will be making that happen.
Have you thought about using panels for the experience of authoring pages with custom layouts?
We use panels. Every time we've gotten panels in front of clients, they're just like, what is going on.
Is it the, I mean, because the backend interface is horribly overwhelming, but the panels IPE experience, once you kind of tame it, can be very wonderful.
Okay,
And then-
I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, okay.
I followed panels, and then we looked at, before we did this, we were looking at Panoply, which Pantheon and other people were sort of helping move along. They made panels UI, they improved upon it quite a bit. But when we needed to start moving on projects, like we couldn't even get the Panoply distro to like work without like white screen. At times it's like, well, maybe this is a little bit heavier handed or heavier than we need to.
Yeah, the panels, well, I've been doing Drupal development for a long, long time, and I didn't touch panels for a long time because I liked blocks and nodes and it made sense to me. But now the sites that I'm building, like, I use panels for everything.
Okay.
And so the experience for authoring any page,
Mm-hmm.
my customers, they just go to the little button at the bottom that says customize this page,
Mhm.
and their page like transforms into a drag and drop doodad, and they can like press the little plus button and they have a modal that pops up and they can add in stuff.
Okay.
And you don't have to really do much to get it to work because it's like part of panels. Just a few modules that you have to make it work. Like there's got panels, and then there's fieldable panels panes, which is sort of solves your blocks problem because it creates custom entities that are fieldable.
Okay.
And if you have fields, then you also have the opportunity to make it translatable,
Right.
which is a challenge with the params thing, right? Because
Mhm.
if you try to do a multilingual thing, you're going to run into problems.
Right. Yeah, it would require one more dimension in that table
So
to,
yeah,
to
anyway,
do
I
it.
just was curious.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of success with it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I hope that it continues. As we attempted to use panels and we're working with it, like, I think this is a bad example because this is entirely custom. There's only 6 things here. You
Sure.
can't add another one. But when you're like, here, when you're adding more content, like making sure that it's wrapped with the exact, classes and everything you need so it's going to perform across all devices and mobile swiping, I think that's where, for us, it started to be like, okay, this is heavier and just requiring, more time than we would like.
Yeah, sure.
You kind of talked about how a client would come in and update their content, but
Mhm.
as far as developers, how do you, if you're not using nodes to store that content,
Mhm.
how do you actually create it when you're setting a site up?
Perfect, yeah. So, let's just, while we're logged in, so just to go to the admin, we've got the nodes. So they're able to get to, the handful of content types that we've got. And then outside of that, on these, on the landing pages, on these, custom pages, in our template, we're literally just saying, hey, we've got our code, drop in a piece of content here. And then, let's see, where is it? Actually, contact ID. I'm totally blanking. There's one level or layer of glue here that you're talking about that it's been so while since I've touched this. Contact form, come on. Okay. Let me take a look and I'll get back to you. But they're like, basically we're creating, the markup exactly the way we want it, and then we're dropping this in. So this keeps everything in code, and then the param tables, if it doesn't have anything in there, it just starts empty, and then they're able to sort of edit it there. But there's a layer of glue where between this rendered content, like where the edit link's embedded if they're that role.
They'll come to you.
Yes.
You're up late.
Yeah.
Let's go with that. That's a valid excuse.
Oh man, an excuse I look forward to not using one day. Let's see. Any other questions or comments? I'd love to hear like what other people, like the panels is really interesting. What others might be doing to handle content or what the pain points. I feel like any use of WordPress, Drupal out of the box, you get so many wins, but then there are so many things that just annoy people so much. And so I feel like as developers and site builders, we're constantly working against that. How do we feel like users have something custom tailored to them? And there are clients that they don't care. They can update it. It doesn't matter. They feel empowered. They're able to do stuff. They don't need it to be, a super easy to use, user-friendly UI. But that the expectation is only growing, and how many users expect that.
With the contextual links, are you going back then to are you adding contextual links with a custom contextual links module, or are you adding them in?
So that's a part of the param module. This is the part of the glue that I'm totally blanking on where that is. But the idea is when the page is built, we know whether or not they're logged in, and we're adding it there.
Oh, okay.
So it's not. We looked into. We started working on this approach. Drupal 7 had only been out for 4 or 5 months, and hooking into contextual links started to get awkward really, really fast. So we're like, okay, at the end of the day, we're sending them to a custom menu callback to edit this content. So we'll just we'll create our own little gear and drop it in. And that was one of the things too that evolved just from a UI standpoint. Our goal from this is one of the first sites we did it. It's just gears. Okay, I can edit content with Seba because there were so many different types of content. We were actually trying to use different icons as much as it's like a muddled, colorful mess to say, hey, I know I'm editing multiple things here, like what to expect. Gears, I'm editing multiple pieces of content. A single little thing, I'm just editing a piece of content. So they know what they're sort of getting into. So, Param grew up beyond just basic text to be able to handle, more complicated fields and reorder and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, it's still just doing the same thing.
That's nice.
Does anyone here build sites in WordPress? I'm curious, how you guys solve. Okay, well, I like that. There's that part of me. Or how do you guys solve problems like this for clients, for sites, I don't know, when we're working in Node and Angular, it's like, okay, there's very few things that they're editing. It's very lightweight. It can be totally custom, but.
Well, I can share, so if I'm going to build it with Drupal, right, we're not I'm trying now to basically hide everything from customers except the things that they need to deal with, right? Mm-hmm. So I have I renamed the administrator role, super administrator. And then that way people can still be admins, but they don't. They've got lockdown permissions about what they can do,
mm-hmm.
Which is a benefit to them. And I told them that because I told them I don't want to see a great big wall of options because it's really scary.
Mm-hmm.
If you want that, I'll give you that role, but I'd rather just preserve you from having to mess with that. And then we just focus on giving them. Just the things they can do, mm-hmm. Which either if you're using the admin menu or the toolbar menu, you can. It's only going to show the options that they can get to.
Right.
And on the content authoring, for most pages, what I'm doing now is I'm using page nodes as a page content type is and then is what every page on the site is. Most pages on the site is just a page content type, and then I'm using Panelizer to convert that page content type into something that can have a panel, and you can actually have multiple panels. So you can go and create a new page and then give the users an option to say choose landing page or interior page. You can have some default templates set up there. Mm-hmm. And then if you're familiar with panels, every panel has a layout which consists of a bunch of panes, P-A-N-E, and then inside of that pane you can dump stuff. Inside of that region you can dump panes. Yeah. And so then what I'm doing, because I don't like the layouts that come with Drupal, and I use Bootstrap, which I see you using Bootstrap, so for the CSS.
Yeah, some Bootstrap, some Foundation.
Yeah.
Both, yeah.
So what I did is I created 5 or 6 different CTools layout plugin things. They're just, if you go and look at the Radix module on Drupal.org, it has a great big pile of panels layouts, and so you can copy those and modify them. And so you strip down all the HTML to just just your columns and your row and your container, and add that stuff into your layouts. And then you can set it so that the users can choose layouts per page. So the authoring experience is pretty nice, because you go and add a new content, they choose page, and then at the bottom they've got two choices, which is customize this page or change this layout. And if you change layout, then they have the big modal that pops up with 5 or 10 layouts that you've given them to choose from. And one of them might be homepage layout, because the homepage has a special format, and you can customize the HTML for that. And then once they choose that, then they can click customize this page, and the panels IPE thing blows out, and they've got these regions where they can press plus and choose the types of things that they're going to be able to put in there, which is nice, because from a content, from a development perspective, you can restrict which things they have options to choose from. So, so anyway, fieldable panels panes is the painting module that fits in with all of this, and it lets you create fieldable entity types that tie in really nicely with panels, so that whenever I click plus and I say I want to add a slideshow, or I want to add a text or image, it pops up the form that's right there where you've got all your fields, and it's inside of a little modal window. And then when they click save, it just saves it on the page, and you hit save at the bottom, and you're done.
Nice.
And then they customize the page, they click it, and they click the little cog wheel, and it pops up, and they've got the fields that are right there that they change. And then there's always like some cruft that you don't want, so a couple hook form alters, and those hide, and yeah, it's totally changed the way that I build Drupal websites. And it makes it really easy for my customers too, because I can show them, you just go to this page, click this button at the bottom, and you're editing on the front end what you're going to see. You don't have to go to a back end thing where it looks totally different.
Right.
So.
Or they want you to theme it so that back end looks just like the front end, and you're like, do you want to double your budget?
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's too much work to do that. Because you've got tables and views and all sorts of things that you don't want to do CSS for all that. I was going to ask you how you do that, because I really don't like having to mess with I like the dependability of like the admin theme. 7 is what, every time somebody makes a module, they're going out and they're testing what it looks like on 7, and then they push it out, and it's going to work there. But it's confusing to clients to have multiple experiences. How are you doing that? Like, do you guys have an admin theme?
For these users, we actually don't. Our goal there was to say the nodes that they have to be able to touch, we want it to work within our foundation grid. And then we get all the wins as far as being able to edit really easily on mobile and tablet. So if I click edit here, I'm within this, and we've laid this out, and we've worked, we've massaged and finessed the CSS, but then we've got wins. So everything, all the work we've done on the front end, just out of the box is working here. So that was one win. But again, I feel like for a lot of sites, when you've only got people updating and managing content, this is more than enough. But at some point, you get to a larger organization where you might have 10, 20, 30 people updating a website. And then at that point, it's like, well, can you really keep everything on the front end? Do you not need to send them to 7 at times, or take a more robust approach?
I found that there's you're right. That makes sense. There's a theme out there called Adminimal, which is a Drupal 7 admin theme that's responsive. Okay. And it works really nicely if you're trying to let people do stuff on their phone and you don't want to mess with the theming on the front end. It does a pretty good job there. But I know what you mean. Don't you find that, you've been doing this for a while, I have too. Don't you find that it's like so ridiculously hard now because of the responsive, because like before it was very easy to build a website for somebody, but now there's like 1,000 variables, and people are, you just kind of, like you said, just expect that it's going to work on their phone, it's going to work on their tablet, and you're like, gosh, you don't understand how much work goes into building a website these days. It's an order of magnitude more challenging.
Right.
But, you know, client budgets aren't always order of magnitude greater.
Exactly. Yeah. So here on the the Mayor Slay again, the win is for them. Like this, they do polls. So we basically all they needed to do, we commandeered web form and just made it and themed it for these polls, which works great for them. It's a very use case, but we're never going to use web form on their site now to collect data. But being able, again, to focus on how do we use our front end so everything they're used to seeing is there, and then we just enable this experience as far as being able to edit questions, and they've their editorial process, like review, like when typos and stuff get through, it's a big deal, and they the person that finds it is like, whoa, good eyes. And so at times the fact that this is front end, they can do it from the mobile phone while they're out or they're not in front of their computer is really big. Do you find with the panels approach, like with all the weight behind that page, like I would just it might work on an iPad, but like that's not going to play nice on
The weight?
like just the overall performance of the page.
Oh, I find that panels adds no negative performance to my websites.
Okay, so being able to use like edit content and manage stuff like from a either mobile or tablet, it's not affected.
Well, you have to do a little bit of finessing on CSS to make the modals
Fit to a device
right.
window.
Yeah,
Okay.
because modals are a little tricky on. Yeah, Bootstrap has nice modals, and the Bootstrap base theme, if you use that, it transforms the CTools modal so
Mhm.
that it looks like a Bootstrap modal, and the CSS and everything is a lot nicer.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, if you're using Bootstrap and you want to start looking at panels and stuff, the Bootstrap base theme is a fantastic place to start
Mm.
because they basically override all of the core and a lot of the popular common contrib CSS, and then hook in and add some JavaScript stuff to enhance things so that it works like it would work if you were building a website from scratch using Bootstrap.
Gotcha.
Because Bootstrap and Drupal are both opinionated and they kind of hit heads sometimes,
Mm.
especially with the forms.
Yeah.
No, in fact, actually, another thing that's kind of interesting, if you want to get into the whole panels world, is there's a module called Panels Everywhere, which lets you, which takes your page.tpl file and it destroys it and it replaces it with a panel. So you have a panel that actually governs your site layout.
Hmm.
So you can create your layout with just a simple, PHP file, whatever, template file, and then you create your regions, but you don't put anything in it, and then you use the panel drag and drop interface to drop in like the site name and the search form and the footer thing, right? So if you dive into that, it's actually a lot faster for the pages to load because instead of hitting the blocks system, you don't even mess with it. You don't mess with the Drupal region stuff either. You just go straight into a page manager page, which renders a panel. That's your site layout. And inside of that is your page content, which is probably a panel. And then inside of the panel is all these regions with like different things dropped in. So it's very Drupal-y in that sense. You get to work with entities, nodes, blocks, menus, and you get to leverage all the stuff that comes along with taking advantage of like the Field API, while still having a lot of flexibility with the way that the layout,
So with that approach, are you saying just for a given template, like as I think about reordering elements on this page, like everything is very contextual and everything is potentially spaced or sized,
right.
or given like it's intentionally designed in relation to one another. So like with that, like some of the markup, if you're just changing regions, all of a sudden all the work you've done to make it work in this lockup, it's going to totally blow up or work
Well, no,
in another.
it takes a different way of approaching it. So what you do is you think about everything as components. So I have, let's say like a slideshow, fieldable panel pane entity type. So fieldable panel pane is the ridiculously long word name, which just means it's like block or bean or content type. It's a thing, and then there's like bundles of it. But it's designed to be worked within panels. So what I do is I create tons of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody says I want to add like these little feature items, which has an image and a title and a little teaser text and a link.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so then I go and I create a feature and I add 4 fields to it, and it's a fieldable panel pane, and now that's something that they can add to a page. And so what you then do, if you're using like less, or if you have a bunch of CSS files, just make a SS file or a less file just for that component called featured content. And then you put in your default styling there, and then you have some simple overrides if that thing appears in the footer. Maybe, change the styling a little bit or whatever.
Gotcha.
Does it make sense?
Yeah.
And then if you want to get a little more fancy with it, there's ways that you can actually, inside of the panels API, you can say only certain types of things can be added to a region. So whenever they go and they click that little plus icon to add something into like the left sidebar, you can limit it so that they only have things that you want to appear to be something they can put in the left sidebar.
Gotcha.
Does that
Okay.
make sense? So
Gotcha.
it's just a different way of approaching it. It's like they it's like Drupal came along and put together these nice content modeling ideas, but and then Earl Niles, the guy that built panels or whatever, said like, okay, I'm going to completely disregard that and build a different way for content authoring and mostly page layout. So that's what I'm using it for.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see some huge wins there. It's like, how much work are you doing to make sure they can't take this region and put it somewhere where now you're doing double and triple the work to style that one component to make sure it works in all these different places. But
okay, so just to round off this thing, then you don't actually have to. You don't have to enable the front end drag and drop interface as well.
Okay.
See, what you can do is you can create. That's the way I like to do it because it's really flexible. But if you just set aside nodes and panelizer, just out of the box with panels and CTools, the CTools has this thing called Page Manager, and on the back end you create a page, and you can set the layout, and you can drop in your blocks, and then on the front end you can give. You can let people use the in-place editor where they can customize the page and drag and drop stuff, or you can just disable that completely so they just have the contextual links
to edit each.
Right, for each
page.
little spot. You still get to use the same page layout building tool. It's kind of like if you're going to do panels, you have to sort of go all in. It's not. I find that there's like a mental breakthrough that you have, and then suddenly it all makes sense, and then you realize that everything that you've done before is no longer relevant because you're doing panels. So, not to say that one way is better than the other, but it's very overwhelming to reimagine this within panels.
Right.
Once you reimagine it, then it's very flexible.
Right. Yeah. Any Drupal sort of philosophy or approach to architecture, starts to say, okay, if I'm going to go down this road, I'm opening up certain opportunities and closing off others, unless I want to endure a lot of pain trying to get things to work together that fundamentally are trying to do similar things.
Well, one thing I like about what you're doing is that I don't mean any offense by this, but you're sort of admitting defeat with what's available to the users, right? And then you're saying, okay, well, let's just put together a simple solution with a simple module, a couple of hooks, and a database, and a simple template file, and move on. And that's the nice thing about Drupal is that you can do that.
Right.
You can just throw in any old thing you want to, and sometimes it's easier to just go in and create a hook menu callback and move on with life.
Right. Well, yeah, and at some point when organizations get big enough, they're going to have people that are competent and capable and feel comfortable with all of Drupal and, potentially heavier weight approaches and everything, and are willing to sort of help support others to do that. But if you're not that person, it can be really overwhelming, and Drupal at that point doesn't actually feel like it's a win. It feels like it's a liability at times. WordPress, Joomla, like all, just even, proprietary CMSs like out of the box when they're just not doing things well. It's like, okay, is this really helping us? So, great. Well, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day at Drupal Camp. I'll be around, so feel free to, come ask questions, talk. Would love to get to know you guys better and just hear about your, the fun and the pain that you have with Drupal. So, enjoy the rest of the day.